Good morning. I'm feeling very sleepy. It's very bright out and I'm feeling very sleepy. Welcome to another revision vlog. If you're new here, hello. My name is Brielle. I'm an aspiring indie author who will be publishing her debut novel Unraveling in 2026. Today we are deep into draft 2 revisions. I'm currently on chapter 39. There are 44 chapters of this book. We are in the home stretch. We are literally racing towards the end of this book. The goal is to finish this by end of February. So I have a few weeks left, not only to get to the end of the book, so I have about 5 chapters to do that, but then I also want to revisit the first 5 chapters of this book before calling draft 2 complete and doing another printout of it. So there's lots of work to do, but we are on track for the writing goals this month, which is awesome. And we're going to keep making great progress today because my friends Caitlin and Andy are actually off work early today. So we're spending the day just kind of writing and hanging together, which I'm really excited about. So basically in this vlog, I'm going to take you along for a day of revising my book. I also want to chat a little bit about what I'm actually doing and looking for when I go into revising a chapter. So I'm going to give you guys like my checklist of questions that I'm asking myself when I'm revising. So that will be a little chat that we have later. But first, I want to go acquire a matcha latte for this writing session because I'm out of matcha powder in my home, which is very unfortunate. And then we're going to call up the besties and get to sprinting. I would love, in an ideal world, why don't we actually do these calculations? Oh no, my keyboard isn't connected. Hold on. I have probably a good 1,500 words left in this chapter, so I for sure would love to finish this one. It's the biggest chapter left in the manuscript. So yeah, we're just gonna hang out for the day. I hope you're feeling cozy, feeling excited. If you are also working on your writing projects and just have me on for some extra motivation, I love that. I hope you're having a really fun time with whatever you're working on. Let me know if you are in the drafting or revising phase yourself. And yeah, let's go get this matcha because soon I'm gonna have to FaceTime my friends. So. My camera running that whole time. Wow. I got the matcha. This is the place that has the $8.55 matchas, which I would not honestly, frankly, get on a normal ass day. But one of the things I love about filming is it feels like a bit of an occasion. And so sometimes I treat myself, but also I am out of matcha in my home. So there's reasons here. Also, my apartment has not looked this clean in a minute and I'm obsessed with the exception of the clothes drying, but that's just life. You know, I'm trying to work on like making vlogging feel a little more casual for myself again, because I don't know if any other content creators can relate to this, but I have noticed something called like I'm gonna give it a name. Quality, authenticity. Oh my God, I just had the right word. The quality, authenticity, disparity, trade-off. Basically what I'm trying to say is I feel like as I try to make the quality of my vlogs better and like do fancier stuff with shots and have better audio, you know, use a mic when I'm recording, yes, the quality goes up, but you do lose something in place of that. And I think, you know, as the production value of your content goes up, you lose a sense of casualness and a sense of personal connection. Not that I don't feel connected still to my audience, because I do, but I think as a viewer, sometimes I just want to like hang out with the creators I'm watching. And so I still want to maintain that feeling of like, we're just hanging out. Here we are in my little apartment. I'm casually holding the camera. It's important to me that there's still an element of that to my vlogs because I don't want the production quality and my focus on production quality to outweigh me still feeling just like a genuine friend to you. You know what I mean? So that's a balance that I'm trying to walk because I do think with certain creators that I've watched over the years, like when you get too worried about like how the videos feel and look and all those things, it starts to feel less accessible and less like you're just like talking to the person. And so anyway, that's something I've been thinking about lately. Let's go right. AirPods are in. I'm gonna throw on these trusty slippers that I'm obsessed with. Oh, we're getting a call. You want to say hi to the vlog? Hold on. No, I was just gonna say I also have weirdly been having the urge to educate myself lately. Like I was thinking yesterday, maybe a goal that I want to set is have like a few hours a week dedicated to just like growth. I would love to do little like exercises or like analyze books that I like and stuff and give myself little projects. Kind of nice that we have that desire at a similar time. So maybe like if we find resources we really like, we can swap and encourage each other to do some learning. It is a few hours later. I come bearing updates and I have a second matcha. I know, everyone's shocked about this development. Hope you're feeling cozy because we're gonna catch up. Also, I'm realizing I only have 4 minutes left on my memory card, so that's really unfortunate. Maybe if I hadn't left my camera running for half an hour earlier, this wouldn't be the situation right now, but here we are. My friends and I ended up doing an hour and a half of writing this morning. Despite that, I only ended up getting a little over 1,000 words revised. I'm really struggling with the scene that I'm in right now, and I think part of the reason is just like a mental block because a bit personal, but in the past few months, I've really been struggling with PMS symptoms, specifically extreme anxiety and insecurity right before my period, which is very unusual. That's not something that I ever struggled with growing up or anything, but it just started happening in the last few months for some reason. And needless to say, I'm not a huge fan of those feelings, but I'm kind of learning that I kind of have to take my feelings in this time of the month with a grain of salt because I tend to think really mean things about myself and it can just get really bad really quick. I talked a little bit in my last revision vlog about like first draft jump scares and how sometimes I'm revising and I see something that's not particularly well written from draft one and it can really just make me start to question my ability to write well, period, even though I know a rough draft is not and should not be the final verdict on my writing abilities or craft or skill. It's hard sometimes when you see something that's just like not up to par, and in this case it's not even that what's in the scene was incorrect necessarily, but it's just choppy, it's not well done, it's like just the execution is so weird. The male character that I'm introducing in this scene is supposed to be this kind of like alluring, regal person, and then on the page he was just reading as this stale, old-fashioned, unattractive guy, which is not what I was going for, and I still don't think I've quite nailed him on the page yet. I'm also just starting to feel like a lot of the ways that I describe people and interactions are getting extremely repetitive, and I know there's only so many ways you can describe. No, I'm not even going to say that because I've seen some really incredible, really original description from writers, and I'm just getting frustrated with myself that I'm reusing familiar phrasing so frequently in character interactions, and I'm like, why can we not think of something different? Anyway, I guess that was me just like voicing some insecurities about my current revisions, but that's not what this clip is supposed to be. This clip is actually supposed to be me breaking down the questions that I'm asking myself in revision, which I do still want to do. Anxieties about this draft aside. So I'm approaching a new chapter and I come face to face with some sketchy looking material from draft one. Some sketchy looking material. What is the course of action? The first thing I would typically do is consult my annotations. So you guys may know that I annotated my entire first draft. This is a great place to start for me. It's not an exhaustive annotation of every change I want to make because frankly, when I first annotated this draft, there were still plenty of problems that I either didn't notice or didn't annotate, didn't point out, but it's a great starting point. There's oftentimes kind of smaller scale issues pointed out in the draft. For example, maybe like how I worded a sentence or, oh, he wouldn't actually say that. Maybe he would say this. I really like starting there because sometimes I find that the small win of a small change is exactly what I need to give myself the momentum that I need to to potentially gut or dramatically transform the chapter. So making some smaller changes that I already have pointed out and potentially solved in my first draft annotations is typically where I like to start, especially if I'm feeling particularly intimidated by the sort of state that a chapter is in. Cool. So that's sort of the starting step. And then I brainstormed kind of 5 questions that I feel like I'm consistently asking myself every time I'm approaching a chapter. I want to make it super clear this is not meant to be instructional. In fact, the way that I revise is not technically correct. Most people would advise you to only focus on big picture developmental changes in draft 2. That is just straight up not what I've been doing. And I'll admit that. I think the reason, honestly, is that I do not want the quality of writing that I did in draft 1 to be the quality of writing that I'm looking at for the next 1 or 2 drafts. I don't want to wait to improve the line level until a much further draft because I would like this book to be more up to a standard that I'm comfortable with earlier on. And because I'm an underwriter and so much of draft 1 was choppy or just not where it needs to be, I thought it would be a lot more helpful to be able to see the book clearer by bringing it up to a better standard before continuing to revise it. So draft 2 has very much been a draft of just like bringing it up to a reasonable standard, bringing it up to the point where like I'm overall happy with the writing quality. And that has been a big part of draft 2, as well as changing things developmentally, factually, etc. So I just want to make that clear that technically I've not gone about revision in the correct way of only addressing big picture developmental stuff in draft 2. I've been for sure line editing and tweaking and rewriting and doing the full 9 yards. And revision is a very personal process. Yeah, I just wanted draft 2 to be, in my opinion, more readable and less rough and rocky, because to me, with the way draft 1 was, it was hard for me to even like look at it holistically because it didn't feel like a book yet, because the writing was just not there. And it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to notice potential areas for improvement developmentally once the quality of the whole book is to just a reasonable standard. But yes, that being said, I just wanted to share my own personal process and how I'm approaching revisions, because that's ultimately what me creating content is all about. I'm never aiming to be instructional. I just want to share my own personal experience and process and like what that looks like. And yeah, you get it. Okay, so once I've consulted the annotations, the first thing I will ask myself is, are the facts of this scene correct? From a world building perspective, a plot perspective, is the stuff in the scene true and correct for what I now know about the world and this story? Because I was a bit of a pantser with draft 1, there's plenty of stuff that I just did not know about the society, the way that it functioned, the way that the government works, the way that different cities are laid out, even certain facts about characters, backstories or lives or personalities. There's just a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And so because of that, there's a lot of aftermath of that. There's a lot of breadcrumbs from that. There's just false things in my chapters sometimes. So one of the things that I'm kind of looking for as I'm going through chapters, is there anything that's just blatantly incorrect that I can easily swap out for the correct information? Another thing that I will ask myself is, are the characters properly represented? AKA, are they speaking like themselves? Are their actions true to what they would actually do? Does the character feel like who I know them to be? Or are they acting out of character? Are they using vocabulary that they would never use? Are they saying things that they would never say? That's something else I'm really trying to pay attention to in revision, is just that sense of character continuity, making sure that people are acting like themselves, talking like themselves. I had a lot of issues in draft 1 with people speaking in overly formal ways, and this is just not that type of fantasy book, so I really had to remedy that in draft 2, make everyone speak a little more casual, make them act their age, then just be truer to themselves as characters. Another question I like to ask is, can we feel the effects of the scenes before this? This is something that again was pretty lacking in draft 1, was just a sense of scenes affecting each other emotions wise and like relationships wise. So for example, if my characters just had a fight in the previous scene, can we feel the aftershocks of that in this scene? Can you tell what just went down between these characters, or are they acting like nothing happened? I feel like this is so easy to clock when you're reading a book and, 2 pages ago you were in the middle of a heated argument and now the characters are acting like hunky-dory, nothing happened. But when you're writing, a lot of times, if you haven't written in a few days between your last scene and your current scene, you might not be thinking about all that context. You might kind of forget where your characters just were emotionally and have them act completely different. So something I'm trying to work on in revision, can I feel the effects and the relationship with the scenes that came before this? And if not, how can I pull that in? How can I add subtle bits of interiority or dialogue or description that tie in maybe what the reader just saw and make this story feel more cohesive and like it flows? Next question is pretty simple, but it's just, did I underwrite this scene? And if so, what is it missing? I've mentioned multiple times now that I'm an underwriter and specifically was an underwriter with this draft. Some scenes, it's a big problem. Other scenes, not underwritten really. Totally fine. So I'll ask myself, is this scene underwritten? And if so, I try to get a little bit more specific about what's making it feel that way. Sometimes it's that there's not enough dialogue. Other times it's the conversation isn't flowing correctly because I didn't add in the sort of connecting tissue. I was jumping from topic to topic without a very smooth flow. Or other times it's that we are not oriented enough in the location. I'll try to get a little bit more specific on diagnosing specifically what about the underwriting of this scene is the most glaring and what needs to be added. Which is why I've added so much word count to this draft. It's because I'm fleshing out a lot of underwritten scenes and we are now at like 82,000 words in this manuscript. So that's not true. 92,000. Is it 92,000? Me now gaslighting myself. Is it? Oh my God, it's 92,000. That's actually crazy. We're like ridiculously close to 100K words in this manuscript. Okay. And the last question that I kind of asked myself is, does the scene flow when I'm reading through it? Ultimately, what helps the most with this is just rereads, but I will try to look for flow, see if things feel natural and how they're progressing, see if just from like a prose perspective, the sentences are flowing together. Sometimes I have to accept that the flow might not be perfect at this stage because this is only draft 2, but I want to keep working towards a better and better flow with each draft, ideally, of the book overall. And sort of a sub question there, I will also ask myself if the scene is starting and stopping at the right moments, because I feel like with the first draft, sometimes you don't quite know when you should come in, and oftentimes you'll end up coming in too early to the point where then you end up describing them like waking up, putting on their shoes, like they just start doing stuff that we really don't need to see. And there's value sometimes in like those slower moments or like starting a scene in a slower way. But I do try to ask myself, is that really what I want to do here? Should I cut out of the scene earlier, or is it feel really abrupt because I cut it off too soon and robbed us of some really important conversation? Sometimes I would do that too. Or I would just summarize too much. Like, for example, my main character just had dinner with like a family and I summarized so much of the dinner, but I still had that be where the scene started. So the scene kind of started with a ton of summary and it was just not right. So then I realized I needed to start us with dessert where the actual conversation happens. And then I could pepper in some of the summary of how the dinner had went in the scene itself rather than front loading that at the beginning of the scene and making for a really dull opening. I'm hoping this was valuable or interesting or something. I put, these questions into this format of like actual questions for the purpose of this video, but in my head, it's not this clean cut. I'm not actually working through a list. It's more so when I thought about it, these are the sorts of things that I'm thinking about during revision. There was just some massive noise behind me. We're going to finish out the evening with some additional sprints with the besties. I'm thinking I'm just going to sit on the couch because that's kind of what I'm craving right now. And yeah, I would really like to finish out chapter 39. I've still not finished this chapter because it is kicking my butt, but I have high hopes that we just need to figure out one little transition between the new part of the scene that I'm adding in draft 2 and the dialogue that was originally in draft 1. I just need to bridge those two, which is like always a struggle with revision, trying to bridge old and new material. But once I can create that bridge, I think the rest of the exchange, yes, it will need some edits, but I can use a little bit more of what I actually had in draft 1 for the ending of this scene. And then chapter 39 will be done. And once chapter 39 is done, it's going to be a huge weight off my shoulders. I also am really strongly considering the idea of after chapter 40 maybe, or after chapter 41, pausing, going back to the beginning to do the first 5 chapters, implementing beta feedback, and then returning to the very, very end of the book. I think that'll be much more satisfying than getting to the end of the book and then still knowing I have to work through 5 chapters. So I have a feeling soon we're going to be hitting the brakes on our progression towards the end of the book in order to address those first 5 chapters, the beta reader feedback. So also I low-key really want to watch Catching Fire tonight. I think that might be the vibe. If you don't hear from me again in another talking clip, but you see me watching Catching Fire later tonight, just know it was hard one with a bit of a grueling week because the past 2 weeks have been intense. In terms of my workload, I had 2 really extensive client projects, the 2 longest client projects I've had to date, and they were both amazing manuscripts. I had a lot of fun working on them, but they low-key kicked my butt in terms of just like the sheer amount of hours and stuff that I was putting in. I'm really proud of how I did on those projects, like the quality of work that I was able to produce, but it felt like I was low-key back in college again, like hustling for a deadline. It felt like finals week. Plus I had a sponsor deadline and 2 Patreon videos due. So the past 2 weeks have just been like a lot of hustle, probably the most hustle that I've had since leaving my job. And so I'm just like tired. I think I really do deserve this weekend, like some proper rest and relaxation, especially knowing that I'm going to be like starting my period. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have my butt on the couch. I want to like bake or something and just like actually rest this weekend because frankly, I feel like I deserve it. I worked super freaking hard the past 2 weeks. So sprint time. I saw Adam Sandler. I saw Josh Peck. I have a picture with Josh Peck. I thought we talked about this.
No, we didn't.
Really?
I don't know that information.
No, I have a picture with Josh Peck. Let me find it. So it's multiple days later now. You notice anything different about the background? We hung our electric guitars on the wall. I think it looks so cool. Something about adding the guitars to this room has it feeling very California, although I'm sure the palm tree print is also contributing to that. I feel like I'm evolving because I used to be such a neutrals, plain everything girly. Lately, I feel like the more color I add to my space, the happier it makes me to look at. I'm really liking the way that my apartment is feeling right now. It feels very cozy. It feels like light and artsy and colorful, and I love it. It also low-key feels very me. Like it doesn't feel like I'm forcing anything. When I look at this, I'm like, yeah, that's got Brielle written all over it. I also put all these fun stickers on my water bottle. Another example of something where I used to be very much like a purist. Oh, I don't want stickers on my water bottle. It's gonna be too cluttered. I want the simple, minimal, like classy look. No, life is too short. You gotta have fun. You gotta have fun. Put some color in your apartment, okay? Anyway, that was a tangent. I know I talked in like the last clip that you saw from this video about like a lot of insecurity and self-doubt, and it's so interesting how fluctuant it is because where I'm sitting right now, I'm actually feeling a lot better about that. And I feel like this is just something that I've grown to know and accept about the writing process and creativity in general, pursuing creativity in general. It is so not linear in terms of how you feel about it. And there are moments where you feel on cloud 9 and really capable. And then there's moments where you feel really not capable, like frankly. And I'm back on like another high right now, but I know I'm gonna dip back down again when I see, you know, a scene or a chapter that isn't working, or I run into a problem where I can't immediately find a solution. I know there's gonna be more moments like that. The thing that currently has me feeling a lot better and more confident is that me and my friend Holly from my writing group went to a library together yesterday, and we ended up just kind of chatting quite a bit about the story. It was the first time in a while where I really spilled a lot of details about the book from like a very overarching perspective to somebody. Like we talked about character arcs, we talked about like the main pitch of the book, and I was just kind of explaining things to her. We worked on a like 1-sentence pitch essentially for what the book really is, like a 1-sentence log line type thing. I used like a template that I found online that I found super, super helpful, and kind of having a 1-sentence sum up that I was actually happy with really instilled some confidence in me, but it also gave me so much clarity about like what actually is what's happening in this story. Like if I had to boil it down, sometimes I feel like I avoid the things that are actually going to give me clarity and answers because it's scary work to me. Like I almost default to kind of spinning my wheels and potentially wasting time in the writing process instead of sitting there and like doing the hardcore plotting and world building and the things that are actually going to help me gain clarity on what's happening in this book, because I'm scared of those things and I'm scared of confronting that and having to figure that out. But I always feel so much stronger about the book and more confident in the changes and the things that I need to do with it after I do that more intense work on like a more plotting type side. So basically what I'm saying is working on that synopsis and talking through some core elements of the book, like who is this character? What does she want? What is the journey of this book really? Like what are they actually doing? Which sounds crazy that I wouldn't have clarity about that, but you know, it gets muddy sometimes, especially if kind of where the concept began versus what's on the page are two different things, you know? This book has evolved. Like at the beginning, all I kind of knew was these characters are journeying to the wall and it was all about the wall. And I think now I've realized it actually isn't about the wall, like at all, actually. The wall barely matters. And in the beginning, that was like the core of the idea, and the thought of not mentioning the wall in the pitch was mind-blowing, but it's not in the pitch that I ended up with, and I think it's a lot better for it. I was actually struggling with writing a pitch prior to doing this exercise because I think I was clinging a little bit too much to my old idea of the book and a less strong idea of the book. But yeah, give me a ton of clarity about what's really happening in this book. We talked about different characters' motivations, and I feel really solid in the motivations of all three of my characters now and what they really want, why they're really doing this. I became a lot clearer on why is my main character the one going on this journey with the ruler's son, because it's clear why he wants to go on the journey, but why he asks my main character to come was not as clear, and I came up with something that I think could really work for that. We will have maybe a couple more vlogs working on draft 2, and then it's gonna be done. It's going to be done very, very soon, which is crazy. If you liked this video and made it all the way to the end, comment down below a moon emoji, any of the moon emojis. If you have a manuscript that you're currently working on and you would like developmental feedback from yours truly, I do offer manuscript critique services. You can go to briellewrites.com for more information, and feel free to email me with any questions you might have about that. I do book in advance as well. So if you know that your manuscript's going to be ready for critique in say 6 months or 3 months, I do book in advance. So you can get my books if you want to secure my current rates and make sure you have a spot. I do also have a Patreon page. Feel free to check that out if you want to see bonus content from me. There is 2 pieces of bonus content already live from January. Thanks so much for hanging out with me in this one. I had a ton of fun filming this. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.